There you go.
That's smashing. Right, good morning, everybody. My name's Wendy Garcarz. I've been in business for about 30 years working for myself. I've done a range of different things in that time, but essentially always around business development, leadership, developing strong leadership, and a big thing for me is about developing personal brand. And I wanted to talk to you this morning around something that's really close to my heart, which is something called brand authenticity. Which essentially is the power of true stories and how we can use true stories to connect with people. Companies spend millions of pounds on marketing, and yet the best marketing costs nothing. Um, if you are authentic in everything that you do as a business owner, then what will happen is that essentially that message will get passed from person to person, customer to customer. And what happens is that word of mouth brings you customers. So in that sense, it costs you nothing. Of course, it does cost you something because you have to put yourself out there. You have to be in business. You have to be doing the stuff. You have to be interacting with people. But essentially, it is one of the most cost effective and powerful ways to develop your business. So I'm going to get you this morning to start to think about what authenticity feels like. And from a personal perspective, this is really important because as marketeers, if you don't understand how to connect with that authenticity, it's incredibly difficult to do it for your customers and for your employers, for the people that you work with. I'm going to ask you a few questions this morning, and I just want you to reflect on them. You don't have to answer. If you want to put an answer in the chat box, that's great. But I just want you to reflect on them. So, a couple of questions to put you in touch with your own authenticity. Do you think it's more important to be right than happy? So, do you think it's more important to be right than happy? Second question. Do you admit when you make mistakes without judging or blaming somebody else? So, if you make a cock up, is your first reaction to think, oh gosh, that was my fault and I should have done it like this or whatever? Or do you look for somebody and to point the finger at? Do you ever say things that you don't really mean or agree with? And this is really important. In the current climate that we live in, it is very easy to get drawn into a point of view and find you're saying things because you want the acceptance of the people around you, rather than being clear about standing up maybe for what you actually think or for what you actually believe. So I want you to reflect a little bit on that. And the last question I'm going to ask you is, how do you feel if you break a promise to somebody? Does it impact on you? Or rather, how does it impact on you? Now, those four questions are really straightforward and they're really simple. But some of the emotion and some of the reaction that they create are not as straightforward, because these are the things that put us in touch with our own integrity. And whether you are doing this from a personal point of view or whether you're thinking about this from a marketing point of view, from the clients that you work with and from the employers that you work with, the same thing applies. Integrity, authenticity is linked directly with our own integrity, our ability to do what it says on the tin. So from a brand perspective then, an authentic brand is, it understands what the company is, what it stands for. It's very honest about the way it connects with the market and with its potential customers. It's very consistent in what it does, not just in its work, but in its messaging. And it's driven by its business values. But the most important thing really about brand authenticity is that it's objective enough to change if it needs to. So if something isn't working or if something isn't right, it can recognise it and it will put it right. So essentially, brand authenticity is about doing what it says on the tin. And if you have a look at how that manifests, how that develops, what you say about your business, if you're the business owner, what you say about your business, how you behave with people, your clients, what you believe in, that is the amalgamation that presents as a brand. So it's the front-facing view of all of those things and how you present yourself to the market. And then what happens is that people who come across you, potential customers, people that you work with, people that work for you, all experience that, and as a result of that, they develop expectations about you as a business. So the sort of things that you do, the sort of things that you stand for. And that's the authentic engagement that is created. So people connect with people and interpret what they see, hear and feel, and they form an opinion, essentially. And that opinion presents itself about in the things that people say about your business, in the shared perceptions that they have about you, the way they talk to you about to others about you and about what you do. And essentially, it's that bit that forms your reputation. And it's the reputation that companies trade on. And those with good reputations do really well, by and large, and the ones with poor reputations struggle a bit. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to take you through how those things are put together. So I think there are 4 critical elements of brand authenticity. The first thing is continuity, being consistent in your messaging. The second is integrity, being responsible for your actions and delivering on your promises. The third is credibility, demonstrating a track record of living your values, whatever they may be. And then the fourth one,
oh my God, it looks so clean and tidy. I clean about
making an emotional connection with consumers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some examples of what that looks like. So the role of marketing for me is to connect to customers through storytelling, using the real life stories that demonstrate all of the stuff that we've just talked about. So that's things like picking stories that demonstrate a company's core values, how they solve problems, what their social responsibility is, what the culture of the organisation is and the personality of the organisation is. Whether they are an empathetic company and have an emotional connection with their clients. And for me, all of those things through marketing should show the human side of the brand. People buy people first. And if you don't have that emotional connection with the people that you want to do business with, you'll really struggle to get a foothold in your marketplace. So I've chosen a few examples. So Ben & Jerry's, loads of people have heard of Ben & Jerry's, and I've chosen these because from a continuity point of view, they're easily a brand that stands head and shoulders above anybody else that demonstrates this continuity. So when I was in America, we went to Burlington, which is where Ben & Jerry's have their headquarters, and everything about the marketing that they have is demonstrates this continuity. They genuinely believe that ice cream can change the world, and it's one of their strap lines. And they do it through 3 key streams of their business. Firstly, they are absolutely passionate about human rights and dignity. And so they not only support local groups or groups across the world with campaigns, they walk the talk. If you have a look at their workforce, they're a very diverse workforce. They really believe in social and economic justice. So this is about the fair trade policies that they negotiate with all of their suppliers, whether it's packaging, whether it's raw materials. They do what it says on the tin, and in fact, on all of their packaging, you'll see the fair trade logos. They're also into environmental protection. So again, they produce, all of their raw materials are produced locally wherever possible. Their packaging is very environmentally friendly. So this is a brand that does what it says on the tin. They absolutely have clear core values, and if you go onto the website, you'll be able to see them very readily. And they live those values in terms of the way they do their business. And it's one of the most successful, sustainable brands that we have as an example. I wanted to look then at social responsibility and the way that companies keep promises. And loads of us will know Lego from when we were little kids, and we've either got We've either used them ourselves, we've got nieces or nephews, brothers and sisters, who have got Lego and have loved it and used it for years and years. So this is a very, very traditional brand, but one of its difficulties is its main raw material is plastic. And so in the last 20 years, really, they've really had to take a strong look at their business model if they wanted to remain current and if they wanted to be socially responsible. So if you look at the Lego company, they are investing $400 million to phase out single-use plastics. So they've changed their business model, their production model completely in order to remain current and on vogue with what's happening in the world. At the moment, they're trialling paper bags instead of the plastic that they used to use inside their recycled cardboard packaging, so that again they're doing the best for their environment. And they could have stopped there, but they chose to take that a stage further and to look at the way Lego impacts on the wider world that we live in. And they've just announced a partnership with the Forest Stewardship Council for their sustainability targets. So everything about them is demonstrating their social responsibility and the fact that they are about childhood education and they want to set a good example, and this is how they've decided to do that. The third one then that I wanted to talk about was credibility, and this is really demonstrate how you demonstrate a track record. And the example that I've used for this one is Rolex. So it's at the top end, it's a luxury brand. But the thing with Rolex is, if you look at them as a brand, they pay scrupulous attention to detail and the quality of what they do. They're very, very long established, so they've been going for a couple of 100 years. They have that reputation, it's well established. But the thing is, they don't rest on their laurels, so they continue to look at their reputation and look at what they can do. They are a brand that's set down in history, so that they have historical milestones within Rolex. They were used very famously by World War II fighter pilots. They were used by deep sea divers when they were laying the first cross-Atlantic cable, communication cable. So they have a place in history which they guard fiercely in terms of it being part of their brand, part of their track record. And in fact, if you unpick the messages, Rolex don't sell watches, they sell timepieces that become heirlooms. So they are selling something that they insist and believe that actually crosses generations, it crosses millennia. You know, they have this sense of history that is woven into the very fabric of their company values, and that track record is why they're still surviving. If you think about timepieces nowadays, most of them are electronically linked. So if you think about Apple Watches and all of the other timepieces that you can buy, why do Rolex still exist? And it's because they're selling more than just a watch. So from that point of view, their track record is something that goes before them, really. Then credibility in terms of being a trusted expert. There was only one that I could choose for this, and of course it was Tesla. So if you look at what's happened around the way in which we are moving away from fossil fuels and we're moving more towards cleaner energy and electric, one of the big areas of that was vehicles. And they have used the wisdom and the insight that they've gained to make a difference to their clients. And if you look at the story of Tesla, he started off by Elon Musk wanted to have the most profitable car company. And everybody laughed at him because they said he'll never do that, because the way you do that, and the way you enter our market and win our market is you go into the lower end and you start producing loads and loads of quantity, low cost vehicles, and that way you buy your proportion of the marketplace. And Elon Musk said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go in at the high end." So when he first started to make Tesla electronic cars, they were £200,000 a piece, and they were right at the top of the luxury market. And people laughed at him and said, "No, no, you know, it's a flash in the pan, and he'll never achieve that." And today, he is the most profitable car manufacturer in the world. He has a really clear vision. He understands where he's going. More importantly, he understands what his customers want, what they are willing to pay for, and Tesla is the trusted trademark of electronic vehicles. Others are making them. They're not making any dent in the level of customer loyalty that he's created in a relatively short period of time. He's solving with his solution. He's solving not just his clients' problems, but he's solving global problems, which is why he's viewed as the trusted expert. Now, this last one, symbolism. This is about the emotional connection, and I'm going to show you a video in a minute. It's only a short video, but I want you just to listen to this. It's not an English language video. And I've done that on purpose. So I want you to see if this creates any emotional connection with you, because you won't understand the soundtrack. So I'm going to start off by saying it's a piece of history. So in 1947, India and Pakistan declared their independence of each other. And what that meant was they became two independent countries. But in reality, that split friendships, it split families overnight. So people physically had to up sticks and move to their country of origin. And this is a little story that demonstrates how that might impact. Okay, so the reason I wanted to show you that is that all of the things that I've talked about today really are about that brand authenticity. And if you can use real life stories to connect with people, that's what you want to create. You want to create that trust, you want to create that connection, and you want to create that emotion in people, because those are the things that people remember. People will forget what you tell them, they'll forget how you said it, they'll forget what you said. People will never ever forget how you make them feel. And that's what good marketing should do. It should really connect with the authenticity of the company, and it should match that to what the client is looking for. So that's all I wanted to talk about. I have a book out at the moment that I've written for small businesses. Branding and marketing is one tiny aspect of business, but good marketeers need to understand all aspects of a business to be able to make these connections that I've talked about this morning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, if that's okay. And that's lovely. I'll just took that away. Yeah, I'm just willing to take questions. Any observations about that at all?
I thought the subtitles were quite funny.
Yeah. Yeah, the English subtitles don't do translation, so,
No.
so they picked up the odd word, but nothing much.
Yeah, one thing I find interesting is how people, small businesses, particularly when they start up, Wendy, I don't know if you've experienced this or you'd agree with this, they mistake brand for a logo.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And they think the logo is the all important thing when actually it means nothing on day one.
That's absolutely true. And when I'm describing to people in the book about branding, we talk about the whole aspect of what a brand is. So what the vision and the values of the organisation are, why they're important, how you connect and how you can convey those. And then there is also some very practical stuff about logos and about colours and about the emotion that those colours create. So for me, people invariably when they're looking at a logo, they just choose their favourite colour or whatever looks good. But there is a psychology behind colour that is an important part of all of this, because people are reading stuff subconsciously when they look at images, when they look at logos, when they look at things like that advert that we've just looked at. They're not just seeing and hearing what's going on, they're making interpretations of all of that. So if you are thinking about if your brand works or if it doesn't work, you really do have to consider quite deeply why that might be and what might be contributing to that.
Yes. There's one of your bosses, and I'm not going to tell you which one it is, who I need to speak to about their logo and their colours. So yeah, I'll take it no further than that at the moment, unless they allow me to share the story later.
So for all of your listeners then, any thoughts about brand authenticity? Is it something that you've come across before? What was your reaction to the video that you've just watched? Did it bring an emotional reaction in you or not?
And near enough started crying.
Yeah, okay. So you're watching something that isn't in a language that you speak, I would guess, and yet it still has the power to have that emotional connection.
One of the most powerful ads ever was the Yellow Pages ad. You'll remember it, Wendy, but yeah. These guys are too young. But Yellow Pages used to be the internet, yeah? The only place you could find anything to do with business was in the Yellow Pages in the days before the internet. And they had the most amazing ads. They spent a lot of money on thinking about their ads. But the one that really got everybody was this old guy sat in a chair, and he's ringing around bookshops saying, have you got a copy of Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley? Nobody's got it. He's really depressed. He keeps putting the phone up, but he keeps going. And eventually gets through to somebody, have you got a copy of Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley? And they go, yes, we have actually. Would you like us to keep it for you? When can you collect it? Oh, tomorrow I could collect. Great, shall we keep it for you? Yeah, what's your name? He goes, oh yes, my name is J.R. Hartley. And everybody goes, oh, it's this little 90-year-old man who's looking for the book that he once wrote. And it's yeah, brilliant advertising. He's got to connect with you. Sorry, Brian, you were about to say something else.
Oh no, I was just saying about the the John Lewis Christmas advert, like you were saying about traditions. That's a tradition for most people to watch that, and obviously it's not the logo, it's not them that make it a tradition. Yeah. It's what they do every year.
So absolutely.
And now everybody else competes with them, don't they? Oh, what's Tesco's ad like? Oh, not as good as John Lewis.
Although it's interesting to see what happened this Christmas and what happened last Christmas during lockdown. So there was a real kickback against John Lewis about the amount of money that they spent on that advert.
Right.
And so we need to be clear that if it is about telling stories, but if we don't watch what's happening with our customer base and their values change, and lockdown moved loads of people's views, considerably in terms of what we should be spending money on, what's more important, should we be connecting with people in a different way? Because that had changed, public perception had changed. Although there were people who wanted to see what the John Lewis advert was, there was lots of people who were saying, do you know, could you have found a better way of spending 7 million quid?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, what questions has anybody got about brand? Has any? Yes, please.
So the video we were watching was the whole point about the universality of marketing. I should be able to understand it anyway, based on feelings or whatever.
Yeah, it was, and Google if you look at their advertising that they use on a large scale, that's absolutely where they're coming from. They are a global company and they use global messages to connect out with their populations, because their populations aren't, it's not stratification of the UK population like it is for us. these are countries that they're dealing with, and countries have their own cultures and their own values and their own traditions, and so they have to make globally attractive messages that reach those markets.
Yeah, I understand that.
So, what was your response to that, Femo? Do you think it was a good advert, or do you think it was, you know, I mean, some people might look at it and think it was a bit cheesy. What was your gut reaction?
Yeah, no, it was a good advert. Obviously, we're watching it as English speakers. We still understood what was going on in the advert, and it evoked some type of emotional response within us. So it did its job really. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't really lost while watching it. I understood what was going on.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
It needs to be that universal message.
And do you see also, guys, how that fits into our EIEIO? That was an O, yeah, but it wasn't by Google. Google are great, you know. It was very subtle use of Google in that ad. It was part of the story. It wasn't you need to spend some money on Google ads, you know, nothing.
No, absolutely. And it's the thing around, if you demonstrate how you solve people's problems, they will be drawn to you.
Yeah.
So it's much more of a pull approach rather than a push approach, but it's incredibly effective.
Yeah.
It's like the advert with Michael Dapper, the Google one where they're talking about like the history of Google searches and why Google's so effective to be such an effective tool connecting us and stuff, and how we can use it to ask questions that we won't normally ask people in real life and stuff. But I thought that was pretty good advert.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Good. So has it prompted some thoughts in you about how you could do a bit more storytelling for your employer's business?
Who, me?
Anybody? Paul's got his thumb up. Yeah. Only Paul then. Okay. Sorry about that, Wendy.
I was just going to say, so for all of you, are you all clear? You're all employed by companies and you're starting to do their marketing. If I said to each of you, are you clear about the company values that you work for? So I've been through the Ben & Jerry's stuff and the Lego stuff, which are very, very sort of blatant almost, in your face. If I said to you, do you really understand what your company's values are? Would you be able to reel them off on your fingers or not? Just a yes or no would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant, Femi.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Would anybody struggle to do that? So I've only got one strip of you, so I can't see everybody. Is there anybody that would struggle to be able to talk to you about your company's values?
I think I know most of them, but I think it's a good, even if you think you know all of them, I think it's really good to ask your client and your boss to make sure, because that's what I'm going to do after this, 100%. I'm going to make sure I know all the values and make sure I understand what his values are and the company's values.
Yeah.
Very important. Sometimes companies do struggle to identify. I say to them, what's your purpose? Why did you set the business up? And sometimes they forget. If they've been in business a while, and sometimes people just set up a business because they think they can do it better than their boss. Their old boss used to do it, which is not the best idea for setting up a business. You really need to understand, what it is. What is your purpose as a business? And that goes back to the values and the vision of the founder, of the entrepreneur.
That's absolutely right, Karen. And lots, particularly with lockdown, we had a lot of people whose livelihood just went to the wall overnight. It just disappeared, and so lots of people decided that they'd set up their own business and they'd go into something as a way of buying an income, and that's not the way to start a business either. You have to be able to connect with your client because you have something to offer which is of value to your client. And if you haven't gone through this stuff about your purpose and what your values are and how you're gonna, how you are gonna do business, not just what you're gonna do, but how you're gonna do it, you just won't get that interaction, you know. And if you're buying widgets, you know, little things that have no intrinsic value, you might get away with it. But actually, that's not what people want now. With the people that they deal with and that they're handing their hard-earned cash over to, they have to feel an affinity with. They just do. And so if companies aren't putting that effort and trying to describe that through the marketing that they do, whether it's social media stuff or whether it's more traditional marketing, they are missing out on a massive trick to connect with their potential market. And, you know, companies have gone to the wall for less. So it is a really vital part of how an organisation can build a really sustainable future.
Yeah, and how
if they
don't keep that in mind the whole time, they can easily lose their future as well. You know, the big example of that, I'll come back to you, Layla, because I did see you had your hand up. The Gerald Ratner, who ran a jewellery store, was the big.
Give me a question, Josh.
Was the big example of that one, in that he was being interviewed one day and he said words to the effect of, "Well, I think our jewellery is crap," basically, is what he said. And overnight, people were like, "Well, why the fuck am I buying it then? I'm not going to buy it anymore," and they don't exist anymore.
You can't insult your customer base like that. And he thought he was safe doing that. The speech that he made was actually at a CBI conference, which was an after dinner speech. There were only 250 people in the room, and he thought it would be humorous amongst other company directors to make a bit of a joke about his business. What he didn't realise was there was a Times reporter sitting at the back. Now, you know, that sort of oversight, is an ambassador for the organisation and should have known better. But you can't believe that you're always in charge of your marketing message. You don't know who you're speaking to. You don't know who they know. And that was something that was intended as a joke, got completely out of hand, and overnight his multi-million-pound business crashed around his ears. I think he lasted 10 days after that. That's a really salutary lesson.
Really silly, but also teaches you the lesson of be careful when you think you're using humour. Because everybody's idea of humour is completely different. And when you're, particularly if it's not a video, particularly if it's a static post, you know, you can't convey tone very easily in a static post. So just be really careful about humour. If you know your audience really, really well, then that's fine. But, you know, it's still dangerous ground.
It is.
Layla, you did have your hand up before. What can we?
Yeah, I had a question. Basically, my boss is only just started his business about a year in. He's quite new to it, so it's a mortgage company. He's worked for mortgage companies before, but it's his own. I don't think he fully knows his values himself. So for me to ask, I think he would be a bit confused himself. So I just wanted a bit of advice on what to do if you're learning together with your boss about the values of the company.
So the key thing is, Layla, asking questions. So ask him the impact of what happens if somebody wants a mortgage and doesn't get one. Ask him why that's important to him. Ask him if there's a group of people who he feels should be homeowners or business owners that he doesn't think gets a fair crack of the whip. Ask him questions, and his answers will convey what his values are, even though he's not articulating them as values. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So kind of trick him into telling you the answer.
Yeah. Why did he become a mortgage broker in the first place?
Absolutely.
There must have been a reason, you know, unless he just fell into it. But if he just fell into it, then why did he stay? What is it about that job that, you know, lights his fire?
If you want a really good example of how to do that quickly, there's a fantastic YouTube video by Simon Sinek called Getting to Why. What's your why? And if you watch that, as I say, there's a long version. I think there's a 25-minute version, but there's a 5-minute quickie that talks about that, and use the questions that he asks in that video, and you will start to uncover that process. And what's interesting about the Simon Sinek stuff is that once you've asked those questions, even though that person may not be articulating them in ready-made values, the impact of asking them that question will change the way they look at their business forever. It just does, because your brain can't unask a question. So once you've started down that path of questioning, why am I doing this? What's important to me? What difference do I really make to other people? What difference do I make to my customers, my clients? You can't not know the answer because it's there. So it's a very powerful way of getting people who may not consciously want to sit down and do a values exercise, because lots of people don't see the value in doing it. But it has a really powerful impact.
Put a couple of links in the chat to Simon Sinek so you can have a look at his stuff. James, hello, good morning.
I'm trying to think of a way to word this question. So my boss basically works in collaboration with a lot of organizations, and a lot of the like values and like stuff I put out that she tells me is the same as those other organizations. So it's like she'll say like, oh, you know, we just operate the same as this place. I guess what I'm trying to say is I find it hard to the like brand. I'm finding it hard to market because a lot of the time she just says it's just like all these other ones. I think what I'm trying to get at is I don't know how to get our brand to like stick out. There isn't a lot of history to it because it's fairly new. So I'm just trying to like.
Again, you could ask her. So why do we exist then? Why would people just not go and use this organisation or that organisation? What makes us different?
It feels like that because she does a lot. She has a lot of like connections. But when I did like a bit of a campaign a while ago where I was saying like what we are, who are we, why do we operate? But she kind of felt like that just wasn't needed because she said that well, our objectives are the same as the other organizations. But then I felt like, but we need to have our own stamp because otherwise, you know, what's the kind of point?
So James, have a look at the stories that you have within your company now, and look for the evidence of how you are delivering those values. It's terribly easy to say we have the same values as McDonald's, or we have the same values as Macmillan, or we have the same values as Lego. It's terribly easy to say those things. What customers will do subconsciously, and what you need to do as the marketing person within the organisation, is look for the evidence. Where can you demonstrate that that's what you're doing? So if one of the values is sustainability, for example, what are you doing within the organisation to demonstrate you are a sustainable organisation? If it's about social responsibility or social justice, what evidence do you have for that? So it's looking at the stories that you are working with every day and the business that you're working with every day to see how what you're doing illustrates what you believe.
Okay.
What's the connection to make?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I thought I saw somebody else with their hand up, but they seem to, was it Lauren or have they gone? Dropped off the call maybe. Okay, any other questions for Wendy as we wrap this up?
Actually, I'm thinking about it. If it's important about the business's values, why, when we have an interview, they ask us about ours and never talk about theirs?
That's a really good question, Brian. A really good question. When they ask you for your values, what they tend to be looking for is they're testing out your character, your personality. So they want to make sure there is an alignment. What's really interesting is that if they were to say what their values were up front, they're more likely to attract the right sort of people. So they do it almost back to front. And there should be, for me, in any interview situation, there should be a blend of both. How can you say you want to come and work for me if you don't know what my values are? And how do I know I want to employ you if I don't know what your values are? So there's only one side of that question being asked, really, or answered. And if you are in an interview situation, you have every right to say to a company, what are this company's values and how does it demonstrate those? How does it evidence those?
I'll give you a short answer as well, Brian, as to why companies don't do that. It's because nobody ever teaches them how to do it. You know, you start a business and, you know, there isn't like a course that you can go on. This is how you do this and this is how you do that. Most people have never had any interview training. They just go into an interview and they think, I'm an entrepreneur, I've got good, you know, good instincts, I'll be fine. And then they absolutely are rubbish at interviewing. I used to run a recruitment company for 20 years, and I've actually, my first ever book is called The Book on Recruitment. It's on Amazon, and it's all about that. It's all about how do you actually find the culture match between a company and an employee, because skills and experience, that's the easy bit. You can see on a CV they've got 5 years experience of Java development, but does it mean they're going to be able to do Java development in your organization for that specific team that they're being employed for? No, it doesn't, because it's not about the Java. The Java's the easy bit. The difficult bit is the culture match, the values and the visions. And most companies are never, ever taught how to do that. So yeah, that's the short answer to why not. But Wendy's quite right. You know, if you're ever in that situation, just ask them, because you've got a right to know. Bethany, you've got your hand up, lovely.
Hi. So obviously, like talking about marketing, and telling story and values. One thing that I'm really looking at when I'm like writing captions for posts and things like that is getting sort of like the balance right between selling and like informing, educating. You got any like advice on that sort of thing?
In terms of the balance, I think that there are two ways to look at it. Are you in it for the long game, or do you just want a quick hit? So there are two ways to look at it. Some campaigns are built on quick hits, so they need to get a really big impact and they need to get that very quickly. And then you would use more overt selling messages. But if you are about reputation building, then you can't do that in 5 minutes, because trust takes time to build. So you would need to be much more subtle, and the use of story in reputation building is absolutely crucial, because what you're doing is you're demonstrating and you're allowing people to come to you and learn about the organisation, learn about their values and what's important to them, and they will develop that trust for themselves. For me, good, and particularly social media marketing in particular, needs to be a blend of both. Because the quick hits tend to be very short-lived, and they don't. You might get, if it's a particular product, you might get a run on that product initially, but it will dissipate as quickly as it manifested itself. If you're looking to build the reputation of an organisation, then you need to get to know each other, you need to create rapport, and that takes time.
It does. And that's why we teach, at Wendy, we teach EIEIO, which is our internal thing, but we've taught all the Kickstarters that, you know, people go to social media to be social, otherwise it'd be called selling media, you know. Exactly. So, you know, entertainment, inspiration, education, information, and opportunity, if you like, rather than offer. You know, what's the opportunity to continue the relationship and to work with that company? That's what social media is about. Unless you've got a ton of money to chuck against Facebook ads, in which case, great, you could probably make it work. But still, Wendy's still right. It's about the long-term relationship that you build.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany.
Right, I'm going to draw it to a close now. And before I say an official thanks to Wendy, somebody asked me a question about the top tier and the certificate. So let me just go through that again in case you missed it. So we're running a boot camp at the moment. Most of you, a lot of you are on it. It's at 11 o'clock every day, this week and next week. Once you've completed the boot camp, if you haven't been coming on live, you can go on to the course. We've created it as a course on the platform. It's called Boot Camp, surprisingly enough. And once you've done that course, you can opt to take the optional exam at the end of the course, in which case, if you pass the exam, and it is an 80% pass rate, you will get a certificate, and you will also be invited to join the top tier. The top tier gets more advanced training. So we want to know that you know all the basics first. Once you've done that, then you can go into the top tier where you get advanced training on all sorts of stuff, funnels, landing pages, email marketing campaigns, Facebook advertising, all the more advanced skills that you'll need as a social media marketing manager. So I hope that answers your question, Michelle. And thank you again, Wendy, for coming on. That was great. How can people pay you back for your time today? Do you have a LinkedIn URL where they could go and leave you a testimonial, for example? Or
yes, in fact, I'll put that in the
put
chat.
it in the chat for us. And then if you've enjoyed what Wendy's talked about today, please do go and leave a referral. That would be fantastic. Connect with her on LinkedIn.
Yes.
At this time of your life, it's all about building your network, because your network will become your net worth eventually. The people that you're connected to is very important in life. For example, most of you have come through somebody on my team, or maybe Gary's team, inviting your boss to a webinar to talk about Kickstarter. And that only comes because I've got 1 million connections on LinkedIn, so that's your net worth. So
Do
build
you
up
actually have 1 million connections on LinkedIn?
No, literally, I don't. But I have a lot. I was one of the first 10,000 people on LinkedIn, Femi. So I've been on it a long time.
I was going to say, could you put me in this boot camp?
Yes. Yeah, Hannah will open up the boot camp for you. Femi doesn't start till Monday officially, or Wednesday actually next week officially. But
yeah, she said she's going to put me down on Tuesday because she's going to spread the hours out or something.
Okay, perfect.
You know the referral fee, is my referral going to get that?
Yeah, I think so. Who referred you?
Lauren.
Lauren, is she on this call?
I think so.
Message me, Lauren, and that'll happen. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. See you Monday for week 2, people. We'll see you at 10:30, and we'll see everybody else who wants. Well, we'll see everybody else at 11 o'clock just for the weekly check-in. And then if you want to stay for the boot camp, Monday's boot camp is about LinkedIn. So Lydia, if you can stay, and anybody from my internal team. And thank you again, Wendy.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
You